scary films at all, they always fascinated me. In a sense, I think I've learnt mostly the craft of filmmaking from watching the horror genre. And the reason for that, I think, is it is eventually fantasy, or creating an emotion of fear just through camera movements or editing techniques or background score or sound, or using actors' expressions, which I think is definitely the most important part. Now, my earliest memories when I went to watch The Exorcist in a place called Rajmandi in Andhra Pradesh. I nearly traveled in a bus for about 80 kilometers from another town, because that's the only place it was running. And for 1 week I was so affected with the film, and everyone used to look like they were possessed in that state of mind. Obviously, but much later, when I saw, years later, I'm talking about 10-15 years later, by the time I got over the fear and I started learning, understanding the crafting of that film in terms of the directorially, how the things are put together, and how the screenplay kind of controls the way you need to feel or think. And pretty much I've tried to learn a lot from that, which I employed in films like Bhoot and Raat and all these films. I think scary films predominantly, they to constantly outguess the audience on what their state of mind at any given point of time would be. I mean, a classic example I'll give, probably one of the best scenes I have shot in my career, in Bhoot, when Urmila gets up from sleep on the bed, and as she, and it's a horror film, that something is going to happen. The fact that you cut from the exterior night effect of the building, and Ajay Devgan is still sleeping. So when she gets up and comes down and goes into the kitchen to have a glass of water and come back to sleep, now that's the content. But the fact that you're having these long stays, you're making a big deal out of she getting up in the night and getting a glass of water, audience are already mentally geared up, in a sense of the word, and they tense that they know something's going to happen. Now, a very usual thing would have been if the camera is going behind Urmila into the kitchen and maybe following her at this kind of a thing from the back. Now, that is something which would never fail to work in a horror film, because the audience don't know what is off the frame. So they're constantly half expecting something to jump out into the frame behind her and to attack her or whatever. But what I did is I just cut a very wide angle lens, and which almost shows the entire apartment without leaving any corner. And the moment the audience can see the entire thing, their eyes are darting to left and right to see if there is something hiding, something there waiting, but there's nothing. And then she takes her own time coming down, go into the kitchen, open the fridge, has her water, and again comes back, and nothing's happening. But by the time they've given the audience enough time to see that there's nothing, then as she comes up the stairs, the camera is in the front of her, so the audience can see behind her that there's nothing in the back, and she can see in the front. Obviously there's nothing in the front because of that. So as she comes close to the camera, and almost an out focus kind of a thing, with the audience subconsciously attuned to see a shot will get cut, and half of them in their mind would think that, okay, now this is just like a trick you played on us, nothing's going to happen, is what I developed the mind state. And then as she moves out, as she kind of crosses the camera, underneath you suddenly see the ghost standing looking up at her. Now the audience at the Eros Theatre, when I saw, they literally levitated. I mean, for want of a better word, they jumped up in the seats when they saw the ghost. Now the point is, it is just that without that long silence, almost I'm playing with the mind. If something will happen, no, nothing will happen. I think nothing will happen. You're reaching that state before you just, is almost like the equivalent of saying boo from behind a door when you least expect. So I think this is just an example I'm trying to give you. In Raat, I've done a scene where I always feel when you're in a theater, when you're in a public place, when you feel nothing is going to happen, you take it for granted, you always expect horror to happen at places probably where like a graveyard, a haunted house,